Thank you. Yeah, like you said, yeah, Angular is going through the amazing changes right now. Of course, at the end, we can end up that whole big discussion, what is better, Angular or React? Of course, Angular. But yeah, let's straight go to the topic, which is about Angular in 2025. Let's go fully full stack. But maybe from the beginning, I will also introduce myself. My name is Tomasz, and I am a senior front-end developer at the company 7N, but that will be the truth only for the tomorrow because I'm changing my company. I have 10 years of experience. I'm a speaker, also a mentor and a teacher. You can find me over the internet at my hashtag TomWebWalker. Short story about that nickname is that I totally love Star Wars. So if you also love them, then please just join me. And the nickname is just Tom Walker instead of Skywalker. So that's it. And yeah, the most crucial role for me through my, let's say, life is being a father of two and a husband of one. So please just clap for my son, young daughter Michalina, and my wife Martina. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, but enough about me. Let's straight go to the topic. So, first of all, I will introduce to you what is actually about the server-side rendering and about being of the full stack approach in the Angular. So first of all, we have a term called SSR, which stands for server-side rendering, which means renders each page on the server side, so the request returns the initial HTML code. And to be a bit more precise, let's start actually from the flow. So whenever we as a user, as a browser, as a client, whenever we visit the request, the page, we are initiating the request, right? So we are asking the server, the endpoint, some address over the internet, give us the page. And the new thing about the Angular is the thing that we have right now, the Angular server. Tiny disclaimer at the end of the presentation, or I will also do some kind of a tiny code session. But behind the scenes, whenever we visit that URL, Angular server does actually three things. And the reason that I highlighted those three things as a blue color, because it means that it is triggered at the same time. So we don't have to wait for each of them, but everything is just doing at the same time. So what we could do, we are fetching the data from, let's say, the external APIs, for example, or directly from the database. And what I mean that since we are using the Angular server, we are just stored, let's say, on some cloud or something like that, or our VPS, or just a server or remote. We can ask a database. So we can initiate the request, the connection to the database, fetch the data, and so on. So that is also a cool, nice thing that we, for example, don't have to utilize some external providers, right? Second thing, of course, since we are talking about the front-end framework, we are, of course, rendering the HTML. And other than that, most crucial thing that we were missing for a lot of time, it was about the injecting SEO. So it stands for all of those positioning, all of those things for indexing the pages. That, for example, we are providing the tags, we are providing title, and so on, so on. So everything is just also with the response. And then we are sending the rendered HTML to the browser. So we just have the received structure of the HTML. And then we also are, let's say, starting the hydration. What the hydration is, in short, is the fact that our HTML, the HTML that we are receiving is, let's say, not alive. We cannot do anything. And then Angular detects, okay, what are you going to do? And then hydrate, so attaches the events, the whole logic to the views and so on. So for example, whenever we click the button, something is happening. So that's in short about the hydration. Second bit more similar feature and term about the creation of the views is the SSG. So it stands for server-side generation. So fetches preview pages for each request, and then pages are represented as individual files on the server generated beforehand. And that beforehand is very crucial. And why? Because in the SSG, as you can see, it is, let's say, a bit more similar to the previous SSR. But in this scenario, the particular praise and the particular difference is on the Angular server that beforehand, ahead of time, whenever we build our application or front-end code, and we are deploying that, for example, to the remote, then whenever we configure that, then particular pages are just generated ahead of time. So in short, they are just stored on the server as a separate dedicated files per each URL page, per each route on our remote. And then we can just ask the server, and then instead of just rendering on the backend side, on the server side, let's say, they are just there. So we are receiving them from the response, and then everything is as the same. So HTML just generates, renders to the browser, and then we are also having the hydration. And the last, let's say, approach for the rendering of our views is so-called client-side rendering, in short CSR. And this way of creating the views, rendering the views, was used by the Angular, is used by the Angular for the most of the times. And why? Because we are fetching for the request, so user just triggers some kind of an endpoint, some kind of the URL, then the Angular client starts rendering, and that is crucial, that instead of having our, let's say, generation at the server side, we are just doing that on the client side. And what it means that, as you can remember from the previous slide, that we were doing, for example, fetching the data from the API by the server, on the server side. We have to do it on the, let's say, front-end side. Of course, we must implement that as well on the back-end side. We have to also do that, secure that, and so on. We cannot introduce the database calls on the client side just to be secured and so on. So that is the one thing. And also, since we are fetching the data from the remote, we also have to display some kind of a loading indicator. And the reason that I added those two red arrows is the fact that it could take some time. So we are just first of all rendering the page, then we are making some kind of a HTTP call to the remote, and then we are waiting for the data, and so on, and it could take time. And imagine that we could do plenty of requests for the, let's say, for the same view, right? And then, of course, at the end, we are rendering everything, just putting to the particular place in HTML in our view, and then the view is, let's say, ready. And about the architecture and actually what is changed in the Angular and how it works, let me just maybe create a project really quickly. So what is new? I'm just switching to my local terminal, and I will just utilize the npx. So it is just from the Node.js, the tool just to utilize some external packages. Since we are on the WarsawJS, I suppose you are familiar with that. And then I will just type Angular, then /CLI, and then latest. And that means that I will use the latest version of the Angular, which is the version 20, and then new, and then my best app. So that will be used for the name of my application. And how you hit enter. Yes, I want to proceed, of course, with that. And let's just allow Angular to do its own things. And yeah, that first question is actually something really, really new. It is about the zoneless approach. For the purposes of this application, for this demo, I will just say yes, but I won't go dive deep into that topic. That is also doesn't matter because we are not talking about the stylings right now. But this last question is the most important. Do you want to enable server-side rendering and static site generation? And right now, of course, I will hit yes. So that the question is something also, let's say, partially new if you are talking about the Angular, because it was introduced with the version, as far as I remember, version 19. So it means that the application will be also stored on the server side generated, let's say. But yeah, let's just skip that those packages, because before I just created a project. So in this project, I will show you two things actually. So first of all, that is the root of my application. And right now, what is the most crucial thing? I just used the same command as just I showed you in the terminal. So I just created that application. And the CLI also produced for me the server.ts file, the TypeScript file. And to be frank, it's not something really fancy, because it is behind the scenes. It is an Node.js Express application server. But what is actually new over here is this guy, is this implementation. So whenever we asking for some of the routes, some of the requests, then we are just receiving also, Angular is handling those requests and then treat it individually in a dedicated way. But how to configure that? There is also another new file, which is called approach server.ts. Of course, like I said, everything is generated by the CLI. And over here, there is an example of the routes that how we can configure that. So normally, previously in the previous regular, let's say, Angular application, we just had this guy over here, this file, which is just for the routing mechanism. And as you can see, I have empty path, I have a news, I have employees, and also FAQ for some kind of a question and answers. And as you can see, we have those three over there. And we have similar, maybe different order, doesn't matter, but we are also having that that configuration for the routes. And as you can see, the client is just like I showed to you that last slide. It is for the CSR, so for the client side generation. Pre-rendered, so it is for the SSR. So we are just asking for the view. Server is just creating that and returning to us with the HTML and the file. And this, the server. So it means that it is SSG, right? So the view is just generated beforehand, and then we are just asking for some set of HTML, for example. And just to show to you how it actually works and what is the difference, I will just run the project via ngserve. Okay, it's now running. So let me just also try to open that as well. Where is my browser here? So yeah, it's a really tiny, simple application with some just few views. And maybe just to refresh the page once again. So yeah, what is actually important over here? Maybe I will start from the view that was generated at the server side in terms of the SSG. So just pay also attention to what is going on actually on that on the network side. So you just open the view, and actually there is nothing because the SSG, that view was generated beforehand. Right now, what is also important that I'm opening the news, and we have the request, because we asked the endpoint, the backend, the server, Angular server for that particular view. And as a disclaimer, or maybe just to remind you, that news was created by that SSG approach, right? So it is just generated beforehand. Sorry, it is generated whenever we ask for it. So that is the view, and also the last view, which is for the employees, and the employees will be generated at the client side. So as you can see, we have just also the request for the employees. And whenever we switch that, nothing is going on right now, because also the request is stored, on the client side. Stored in terms of that we have the same session. So whenever I will hit the refresh button, of course, there will be the requests. But the change is also over there, that, as you can see, I visited the route, the view, which is generated on the fly, on the server side, right? So the difference is that right now, there is nothing on the network side, right? So whenever I, once again, just to show it to you, that there is nothing. But whenever I visit the employees, there is a request, because I just generated the view on the client side. And the second important thing also is that if you are talking about the positioning that I mentioned a few minutes ago, that whenever I will open the source of the page, as you can see, it is totally not something SEO friendly, right? So any of the robots that will visit our page and will detect that route, that employees route, will be, let's say, disappointed, because they will just see that and it won't be positioned. But if I would visit, for example, the news and show you the source of the view, as you can see, we have something. Of course, for us as a human, it's totally not readable, but you can believe me that over there in that HTML line, there is everything what is actually also visible here. So whenever the bots, the indexing mechanism will visit our route, they will see that that page, and they can easily read everything from that code, from the HTML part. So those two files actually are the most important ones. So as a reminder, the new thing is that Angular also handles the request, so we can also render the views, and that is the way that we are configuring, right? So we can set it to client, we can set it to pre-render, or just set it to the as a pre-render. Of course, you can also have to keep in mind that it is not so, let's say, easy peasy to tackle that, because also keep in mind that whenever we are, for example, working on that, especially some kind of a session, right, that we are keeping something on the local storage, then we have to treat it separately, because, for example, some kind of a data can't be stored on the local storage, but server, of course, doesn't know anything about the local storage, because it is not a client, right? So we have to also keep in mind that, and it could also introduce some kind of a complexity. So also we need to keep in mind that. So every, let's say, aspect of that, we have to treat it separately. So yeah, that was the application. So once again, the most important thing is over there, that whenever we visit the page, as you can see, there is no request for that server-side generation part. But whenever we visit the employees, and also you could saw for a while the loading indicator, right? So whenever maybe I will visit that once again, if I'm lucky, and if the network will be slow enough. I hope it won't broke, because I'm also sharing my session for the stream purposes. But yeah, good catch. Let's see what will happen. SG. Whoa, I even forgot about SG network speed. It could be a bit slow. Loading employees right now. Yeah, good catch. And yeah, whenever I will visit the news, there shouldn't be any loading indicator, right? But it was just loading the view in general. So yeah, definitely a really good catch. But let me just make the internet speed once again. So yeah, about that was it. Of course, I will share my presentation on the LinkedIn, so you can definitely find it. And if you're also looking for the presentation for my LinkedIn account, you can also visit that. And yeah, that was actually it. So thank you. If you have any questions, yeah, please go ahead. I also really love to mention somehow other presentations at the same talk. So of course, please keep in mind watering and the QR code. So yeah.
Hey, so thank you for presentation. I have a question about the hydration process. Yeah, because initially when it was introduced in React, for example, there was a problem that when we made hydration on server, we allowed the HTML in the browser, but we need to make it interactive. Yeah, so we need to build a virtual DOM again and etc. So there was a lag between we load the HTML and until it starts to be interactive. It was fixed with different approach, different framework and etc. What my question, how it works right now in Angular and how this issue was fixed there?
Actually, it's a bit more deeper topic because also with the new version of the Angular, shortly speaking, the Angular team also introduced the so-called new control flow, right? And it also contains the feature called defer. And that defer could be configured in many different ways. That, for example, whenever our button, let's say, is visible, I mean, it is on the viewport, then the hydration is also attached. Or whenever the user will click something, then the hydration is also attached, and then everything is pulled to the same place. So definitely it is that. But as I also some kind of a disclaimer, the Angular is going through the really huge, let's say, some kind of a renovation, right? So right now it is done by that defer approach, and yeah, definitely you could try it, that defer block. Maybe even I can try to really quickly show it to you at least from the. So yeah, so I'm talking about this implementation. So it could be configured that whenever it is visible, then the hydration is attached, shortly speaking. But like I said, it is a bit more deeper topic just to explain.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for the talk. I was curious because I'm a fan of Next.js, and we have this thing that is called incremental static regeneration. And I was wondering if you also have it in Angular.
Incremental static generation.
Yeah, I can explain it if you want. Like, it's pretty similar to SSG. So if you want the page to be generated during the build time ahead, but you still want it to revalidate after some interval.
Actually, this way also could be configured by the defer block, because it also can be configured in the way that which components are imported in particular scenarios, right? So whenever, because I mentioned about that hydration, but it is also used for the loading of the components, right? Like even you can see in this example, large components, so we can configure when not just the hydration, but also when the component will be loaded. I mean, imported to our view.
What about the other server support? Like, for example, BAN. Do Angular plan to integrate BAN support or only Node.js? How it looks on the server side with all these polyfills and everything? Do you encounter any problems?
In terms of the ban, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if it is covered by the Angular that we can easily use that. I definitely heard about the white, but about the ban, to be honest, I'm not sure if there are plans to use it, but maybe there are. Like I said, Angular is going through the amazing changes that are just done in a really speed and fast way. So right now, I suppose there are no plans, but what the team will invite. We'll see.
Okay, lovely. Well, if you remember, Bun's promise is to be 100% compatible with Node.js. So maybe if they kept their promise, it would be no problem and there will be no questions at all. Can it run on Bun? Of course it can. If it runs on Node.js, it runs on Bun. But it doesn't because it's different. Well, thank you so much.
Yay.
Warsaw.